So I was in the coma for 2 months, but it seemed like I was drifting in these worlds for 7 years. To the point when I came out, I felt 7 years older.
Wow, it almost seemed like the accident, um, man, like a push from something, out of this world to really push you into this,
Yeah,
like a spiritual thing, like almost like.
yeah, and it's funny that you say it in that nature because it is definitely the most spiritual awakening that I've ever had in my life. Not to go back into that, but the whole time that I was in the coma, I was having like lucid dreaming. So to me, I was in a world where I was dying and reborn. And so I was living in this world for like 7 whole years. So I would die and I would be in a different time period and a different landscape, a different world, essentially. And I remember it to this day, even more so as time goes. So it's kind of like you're in a dream, right? And they say that you think your dream's been like you can only recall X amount of time, but you've been in there so long. So I was in the coma for 2 months, but it seemed like I was drifting in these worlds for 7 years. To the point when I came out, I felt 7 years older. So it was like I was going through these portals and time loops, but I was dying in these worlds and different lives, and I was being reborn. And I remember those worlds to the T. I remember the way things smelled, taste, and felt. My senses were like huge. That's why when I got out, I was like stunned because, again, I didn't know what had happened to me waking out of the coma. So I'm just laying there and I'm like, and the only thing I can remember is the worlds that I were in.
What are some of the things you remember about, like, those worlds? And
Well, so for instance, I fell in August 2016. As we know, Donald Trump became president in November. So his whole entire leading up to the election, I was in the coma. So when you're in a coma in the hospital, they have someone that watches over you like a babysitter 24/7. They're not really medical professionals, but they're just there in case you flatline or something and they can get someone. And I think that they had been watching all of this, elections and the debates and things. Well, it was going into my subconscious while I was laying there. So, like, for instance, one of the things where I was laying in my bed, in a hospital bed, and my girlfriend and my brother were there, and it was just a normal hospital. And then my hospital bed turned into the Republic Convention Center of New York. So then, where it used to be doctors and nurses going by my door where I could see that was open, it was just guys in suits on their phones and on their tablets and, very like whatever, whatnot. And they were using me as a test subject for this serum that they shot into me with these huge needles so they wouldn't lose casualties at war. And that was like a part of Donald Trump's, his um, one of the things that he was saying for to try and earn votes. And I remember that so well, like where they're coming in and they're shooting me with stuff. And I can remember the pain. I can remember being held down and it's just felt so real. I mean, I had so many of those, 7 whole different situations that were like that.
so in while you're in the coma, you're still in the hospital.
Right. And I know that I'm somewhere. I can understand that I am. It's like when you're in a dream and they talk about lucid dreaming. You know you're dreaming, but the extent of what you can do and how you can move is when these people do lucid dreaming and they can go up in these steps, versus like when you're in a house and you're dreaming. One of the things is if you can turn on and off a light. These are things that are allow you to know that you're dreaming, but you're in this world. And so, like, a lot of that was like for me, where I was making decisions and I knew I was there. I could feel things. My senses were like heightenedly overloaded, with just emotion and everything. Um, there was one instance in a world where I lived in a cathedral, and this cathedral was like as far as I could see. The ceilings were so high and the wood was like perfect. The floor, the walls, the ceiling were all the same wood. And I would be laying on the floor, lethargic, right, for like days and days on end. And I would slowly be trying to like stand up on my feet. And then, like, it would take me in my world, it was a month or so till I was just like, put my hands on the ground and I was just making the motion to stand. And then these two giant, like, kind of steampunk, there were these glass things, and inside the glass were like mechanisms of like steam, and they were able to move like old locomotives. But there were these little like men inside, like the brain and the Ninja Turtles. He used to be in there with the big guy. It was like that. And as soon as I felt like I could got the power to stand up, they would come and they would play this music. And the music would just make my body go back down to the ground. So the music was what kept me down. And the steam would be blowing out of them, and I'd be looking, and they'd be like 30 feet tall. And then as soon as I was back down on the ground in this resting place, they'd just go off. And then I'd spend another month trying to get back up to my feet, and they'd come. And then I just did that for like 1 year, which to me felt a whole year. It was like borderline torture in a way.
That's insane.
Yeah.
But it's insane, but it's and not insane like you're crazy, but insane that you can you have these dreams and you can remember them, and the time feels like it's gone by.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people, they've done studies of people in coma that can recur, like they can remember a lot of things, and there's a community out there. And as you know, I was already previous, my not my real spirituality was through quantum physics, theoretical science. And a lot of these things are tapped in to that infrastructure. So for me to already have had this kind of mental awareness of the mind and the self, and then to go through this episode, it was like it was destined for me. It was the path. We in quantum, there's a belief that you have a path, right? There's a movie, Donnie Darko, and the people, he can see these paths that people have. It's like a wormhole coming out of your gut that you're like naturally following. And so it was kind of there was no way that I wasn't gonna have that incident to happen. So it was just, yeah, it's metaphysical.